All right, so tonight on Watch This with RickRamos, we're in 2022. We're still dwelling in the past, mining the archive. Watch This with rickramos.libsyn.com. 10 years, 500 episodes. Last week we ended with Kubrick. Tonight we begin with Gilliam and his Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
You know, one of the things about movies that that surprises you is how a film will affect somebody else. And as long as you and I have known each other, which is going on probably 16 years now, 17 years, 15 or 16 years now, 2009 to 2024, whatever the fuck we're in right now. Yeah, I forget sometimes. But there are things that I want you to watch, and I think there are things that you want me to watch. But in the back of our head, we're like, I know this motherfucker, and I know this motherfucker ain't gonna like this. So I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm very much surprised when we talk a movie that I want to talk about. But the most that I can hope for is your appreciation of maybe the production design. That's basically what I thought was going to happen with The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. And it's difficult because it's a film that I hold very dear to my heart. I think for me it's like what I imagine people in the 30s and the 40s seeing Wizard of Oz for the first time. That's what Munchausen was for me, because it's so full of life and it's so full of energy and comedy, a little bit of that Python-esque kind of ridiculousness, plus an element of a big element of the old man and the winding down of life, something that we talk about quite a bit, both on air and off mic. And so it was like really surprising to me that you really embraced the movie the way that you did when we watched it. I don't think it's one of your favorite films of all time, but I was really surprised at how much you liked it, if I remember correctly from the discussion of 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like it's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
And I typically don't vibe with like these super optimistic like films. But like that may not be my jam or whatever. But every so often there is I guess there's two. I can break it up in like two types of those types of films. So I can say something that is whatever rom-com fucking comedy bullshit, like and I say bullshit like not dismissively, it's just whatever stuff, whatever type of thing that's out there that's built into that genre is that. I'm not really oriented to those kind of films, so I don't really like seek those out and be like, yeah, like I want to like watch something that's just gonna make me laugh and like I just want to LOL fucking tonight. You know,
you're not an LOL guy.
Yeah, I'm not really the fucking LOL guy.
I don't think either of us are, but yeah.
Yeah, those are not my you know what I mean? Like my films are fucking WTF, DTF, FML, you know?
Yeah, very much so.
So there's all of that, but then there's also certain films that there's an element to them that's uplifting without being cheesy, right?
That's an important element. Yeah, that's a very important element, to not be cheesy. And this film could have very easily dipped into that world, and it didn't. Yeah.
Right. It's where you do get a sense of like something that is, as you said, full of life, something that's bursting with like an Anthony Quinn performance.
Mm-hmm.
It's so big, and it's so something Zorba the Greek, something of that nature. You know what I mean? Where you're just kind of like, wow, like this makes me want to fucking dance on the beach and fucking chug wine and throw my head back and fucking howl and laugh. You know what I mean? Like something that's inspiring.
Yeah.
Inspirational. That something like this. And I like that as a contrast to this whole thing. I've been going back and forth with the politics and inserting that into it, and we continue to do that. But it's kind of like when you look at what the messaging of the Harris campaign with Waltz versus like Trump, like obviously one is like a gloom and doom fucking fear mongering genre, and the other one is just kind of like bringing in this aspect of what they're calling the politics of joy, and to see how refreshing it is for people. And if I'm looking at people watching this just in terms of like audience, the audience sometimes gets tired of fucking like, the end of the world, and want to see something that's kind of a little bit like more fresh, more new, more seemingly at least, whatever, forget the policies. I'm just talking about the vibe.
Yeah.
And the editing. And it's just kind of like to turn the page and to look at a film like Munchausen at the beginning of the year felt right. It felt natural to especially like, coming out of all the shit that fucking we had been coming out of in the years ahead of that. So
in the immediate years ahead of that as well. I mean,
the immediate years ahead of that. Correct. Yeah. So from there, we moved to a solo episode of you doing Life.
Have you seen that movie? Have you ever seen Life?
No.
I think it's a great little movie. I think it's one of the last until Murphy did My Name Is Dolomite. It was the last really good film that he did. It was an R-rated comedy. It's a very real story in the sense of injustice and the penal system and the judicial system, especially, regarding black men, especially during that time period, the 1930s in the South, and these two characters who were railroaded for murder. And the thing that makes it so beautiful is the depth of the characters that are created. I really think it's something that you should watch just for the potential sheer enjoyment. Murphy's never been better. The supporting cast is great. Martin is great. And it's a little bit, by the time they get old, because they span from, I think they're playing characters in their early to mid 30s all the way to their mid to late 90s. And I think it was one of the last films. The Wolfman was the last film that Rick Baker worked on, but this was one of the last films that he worked on with natural makeup. And if you watch Murphy, it's not a glamorous makeup job. These are old men who have been forced to work in the sun, digging ditches and clearing swamps for the last 55 years of their life. And it's a beautifully realized film. I think it's very heartwarming. I think it's very, when you were talking about Munchausen and the fantasy aspect and how most of the films that we like are darker.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. I think you and I, like if we take a prison movie, for example, let's say Shawshank, which I think is a damn good film, but doesn't compare to An American Me or to a Animal Factory.
Animal Factory?
Yeah. And I don't think a lot of people would think that. I think a lot of people would go, "Oh fuck, I'd much rather watch Shawshank Redemption." And the reason for it is because it's so optimistic. I don't like optimism in that kind of storytelling. But if you're going to do it, make it extreme. So Munchausen is an extreme fantasy film filled with love of life. It doesn't shy away from it. It doesn't hide from it. And I think that's the difference between something that is negligible, I guess, or something that, as much as I think Shawshank is a good film, it doesn't fucking compare. And
I mean,
you know,
yeah, it's the I mean, I see it as, and it revolves around what you said, the being extreme, because it's kind of like we can look at optimism on a Hallmark card, and it's just optimism on a fucking Hallmark card, or we can look at optimism like, hey, like I make $5 more an hour than I did last year, and you know, someone can just come and be talking to me about that and telling me that how they make this this amount that seems like it will make some kind of even minor change in their life, but it's actually negligible, and that I can do it too. And it's just kind of like, I'm going like, okay, you know?
Yeah.
Or someone can say like, someone can tell me, you know, my grandfather, he just turned 70.
Yeah.
And he ran such and such fucking marathon, blah, blah, blah. He's a crazy motherfucker, blah, blah. And then I'm going to go, wait, what? Like, tell me more.
Yeah.
And out of that story, that crazy and unlikely story of someone's hypothetical, this invented person I'm talking about and their grandfather, somewhere in there I can say, wow, if that asshole can be 70 years old and run whatever fucking crazy ultra marathon, whatever, maybe I can fucking eat a salad today, right? Or maybe I can fucking eat whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
I can straighten this boat out. I can get this back where it needs to be. Yeah.
One is kind of like, it's bullshit. It's not bullshit, but it's just words on a page, the Hallmark card. One is just kind of like, yes, money motivates, but motivation there has to be some kind of meaning. Telling somebody like, hey, like if you do hard work, yeah, you can get that little $5 gift card at the end of the year, or you can get your little pizza party at the office. That's not gonna fucking motivate people. But if you're like talking some crazy story about how your wife was a pirate and you met her after she crashed on the fucking shores of Madagascar, and fucking, not that kind of pirate, but like hook pirate. Not like Somali pirate, but whatever, like she crashed on the shores of whatever thing, and but she rescued you and blah blah blah, and you go, god damn, I need some fucking romance and adventure in my life. Let me go talk to that barista. You know what I mean? Whatever. That's Munchausen.
It is.
That's that. And with prison movies, it's kind of like, if you're gonna escape from a prison, like, make it a great escape, right? Yeah. Make it something. Not to say that Shawshank isn't a great escape, but Shawshank is a great escape on a Hallmark card.
Yeah. It's Animal too clean. Factory, it's too sweet.
Yes. Animal Factory is Mickey Rourke telling you to eat his pussy, and then you escape from that because there is no other way but escaping that. Because that's fucking insane. It's funny, but it's fucking insane.
Yeah.
And, you know, not to mention Tom Arnold, you know?
One day we will find the time to dedicate to that movie, because it's a movie that's there. It's sitting there with us. You and I have a long history with it. I mean, it just comes up in conversation every once in a while where we want a good laugh. We quote that movie, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. If I quote that movie, you know exactly.
I tried to show a clip, and this is like a couple of weeks ago to Leslie,
Mm-hmm.
and she was like, "Nope, nope," and I was like following her out of the kitchen, like, "No, check this out." She's like, "Nope, not right now. Nope, not right now." So yeah, she didn't want to see Tom Arnold put his finger in his mouth.
Yeah. Well,
You guys are missing out.
oh yeah, they are.
So from there, we episode 364, Mizoguchi's Ugetsu Monogatari, Ghosts of the Pale and Shadowy Moon After the Rain. What a fucking movie.
Yeah. Every once in a while, you see something that, I guess the only way I can describe it is to really say that it digs deep into the possibilities of cinema, and everything about that movie is compelling. And it really, if you love movies, because there's going to be a lot of people who will be like, "What the fuck are you talking about? I ain't reading that shit." Well, not the people that listen to us, but there are a lot of people out there that is like, "I'm not reading that shit." But it's beautifully told, and it's honest and real about our weaknesses, and it's a ghost story. Terrifying in some sense, because it's not a frightening ghost story in the sense of what's in the shadows. It's really about what's in the shadow of our hearts and soul, and the things that we don't know about ourselves, and the greed that exists, and how that can be our ultimate downfall, but also can bring down everybody with us. I go back to it every once in a while. It's a beautiful film. I'm glad that we got to sit down and talk about it. One of the greatest films ever made.
Yeah, it's on another level.
Yeah.
It's and again, it has there's a lesson there,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a journey. It's not just it's not just that, oh, let me tell you what this lesson. It's no, let me take you on this journey, and I'm going to show you this fucking ghost. From there, history of rock and roll, we kept touching on. We did the Rolling Stones.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot there, you know what I mean? Drums beating cold English, blood runs hot. A lot of documentaries to kind of stay on that theme. There's the Keith Richards Under the Influence one. There's other shit there that we did that's related to the Rolling Stones, like Sympathy for the Devil, Jean-Luc Godard's film, which is very experimental, studio time stuff. Ronnie Wood has a documentary that we talked about. It's called Someone Up There Likes Me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of in the spirit of what we're talking about, where it's like, here you have these motherfuckers that just like live their lives to the fullest, and are still fucking, with the exception of Charlie Watts, who passed away. They're out there, you know what I mean? Like, still as fucking these octogenarian fucking rockers, and they're having a fucking blast. And sure, they have shit to regret. And they did all this crazy stuff, and they got lucky. They got rich, and they got lucky.
Yeah.
But it's cool to watch.
Well, the world of rock and roll is such a compelling foreign idea to so many of us, because we all have our ideas of what it is and what it's supposed to be. But then when you hear these guys talk, you understand. A lot of times they're very open about their lives, especially Richards. Richards seems to be very open, and maybe to his detriment at some times. But you get the feeling that there's an actual love for what they're doing. And
oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, I mean, you don't maintain that kind of productivity and teamwork, I guess, is the best way to say it. I mean, I don't like the word in this respect, but I think it really does cover. You don't do what they did for almost 6 decades, without there being an intense love for the thing as it is, and the innovations they can bring to it, and the artistic expression. And it's fascinating to see the infighting. It's fascinating to see how they relate to one another, and how it manifests itself in the music. That was a good episode. That was a lot of fun to do and talk about, and understand one of the great bands a little bit better than we have any kind of right to. I mean, they in the 20th century, there has been this ability to document the creativity, the partnerships. And it's weird because you're literally listening to Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and Brian Wilson, Charlie Watts in their 20s and 30s, all the way up until their 70s. I mean, how often do you get that kind of... When do you get to see that level of intimacy? I mean, it's for me, it was, I think it was really powerful.
Yeah. I mean, I think you said Brian Wilson.
Brian Jones. I'm sorry, Brian Jones.
Yeah, but I mean, and then the reactions to like shit, like to see them young, Brian Jones young, he dies, and then to see them and Bill Wyman leave, and like all this shit, and like you say, like it's the seasons of life, but as a band, and Mick Jagger's still out there, you know what I mean? Like,
still dancing.
People say, "Oh, that's fucking silly," but it's kind of like, no, this is also inspiring. Like, and it's legit to see him fucking dance at that age. It's still legit to see fucking Willie Nelson get out there.
Yeah.
Like, it's not kind of like, oh, go lock yourself away now. You're old. You can't rock and roll anymore. Like, no, you can fucking rock and roll till you're dead and after, you know what I mean? Like, so it's also uplifting.
It's inspiring. It's
inspiring. Yeah,
definitely.
So from there we went into the series that you suggested, which was very interesting, very cool to do.
This is one of the favorite things. Yeah,
a year.
Well, it's one of the
one a month episode.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I'm happiest that we did, because I thought it was a lot of fun, and I thought it, number one, nobody had ever really done it. I don't think I'd ever heard anybody talk about discussing a decade because when you talk about a decade of cinema, you're not talking about just a decade of cinema, you're talking about a decade of culture. Because cinema and culture are so intertwined, and they affect one another. One influences the other, the other, and vice versa. That's just the way it is. You know, I just 2 weeks ago I took my mom to see Casablanca, and I was laughing because I was telling her, I was like, I'm going to start smoking. Fuck it, I want to start smoking. And she was like, what are you talking about? I was just like, you're going to tell me that anybody has ever looked cooler than Humphrey Bogart, sitting there smoking a cigarette, crying about the bitch that left him? There's nothing better than that. I'd be smoking, and I'd force everybody.
His name is Rick.
Yeah, yeah. I would force. If I could, I would take all color out of life. We would live in black and white, and we would smoke all day. I just, there's something powerful about that. And so when we were talking about, we got right from the beginning. So like, film was created in 1890, basically. So what you're looking at is kaleidoscope kind of shit, where the film was created because somebody wanted to win a bet. If I remember correctly, there had been experimentations, there had been ideas with the image, the movement of image to tell a story. But in order to do so, you had to create, you had to create something that could capture that image. And there was a bet, I believe, between two gentlemen about whether or not all 4 feet of a horse while he's running leave the ground. And so a gentleman basically funded this bet, costing him way more than he stood to win, but to photograph a horse running. And at one point you would see that all 4 legs were off the ground. But what they saw was that when you put it in rapid motion, the illusion of movement, because that's all film is, 24 frames, 24 single pictures taken per second. And when you put them together, your brain does the rest. It fills in the gaps. So what we did was we decided to take a cultural look at the films of each decade and talk about the ones that influenced both the culture and both influenced the culture but spoke about the culture. And we might be wrong. This might be us leaning into our political ideas, but it was hard for me to imagine a film from the 1910s that didn't say as much about the culture as D.W. Griffith's The Birth of a Nation. I think it's probably one of the most influential films that has ever been made. So you're talking about something that basically set up a good portion of the vocabulary of cinema, but also did so in a way that furthered a political ideology and a cancerous, racist, and horrible attitude that has carried this country for so long. And I know people are going to say, well, we're not like that anymore. Well, to a degree, no.
Right.
But that shit still exists. Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy to go back and watch this film, and to see this fucking epic classic of cinema.
Yeah.
And to see the storytelling and these episodes, these events in the film, you see this idea that, well, there's an election, and there are you have blacks voting. And in the film, these characters are like, wait a minute, these black people voting are disenfranchising white voters. We can't have that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have people protect the vote, stop the steal. And so you have the KKK come in and prevent now black people from voting, because the black people are supposedly trying to influence and steal the election, whereas it's actually the KKK that's doing that. And I'm going like, fucking how things change, but how they stay the same. Like, this is the same shit that's happening now. Like, this is the same Donald Trump fucking like Republican Party playbook. Their playbook is fucking Birth of a Nation.
Yeah.
You have the depiction of African Americans in government with their no shoes, they're barefoot, their feet are on the table, they're eating fucking chicken, they're fucking like the most stereotypical bullshit that they can come up with. Well, I think I said that to them, like, to a MAGA Republican watching this film, they see those people as the squad, the AOCs of the world, sitting up there when they shouldn't be. That was 2 years ago when we talked about this. Now we're in where it's Kamala Harris, Tim Walz versus Donald Trump and J.D. Vance at his couch. And it's the same shit still. In the film, you have this so-called weak white politician who I equated with Biden, and this so-called mulatto fucking like temptress woman who's like influencing him. And I was like, that anyone seeing this is going to be like, oh, that's fucking Kamala, but they don't even, Kamala or whatever bullshit fucking hell Trump slurs and fucking tries to criticize her name, because obviously it's not Melania or Ivanka or Camilla as he fucking slurred the other day too. You know what I mean? Like, this shit is the same. Like, this shit is watch this film and you will see our current news cycle.
It was disturbing, because I don't think either of us had actually ever sat down and watched the entire film from beginning to end. I had seen clips of it, and there have been attempts to show it. I even remember being in a class. They had to show this film at like 10 o'clock in the morning, and it was kind of like a on the down low kind of thing, because people were pissed that anybody would show this film, because and you and I are of the opinion that a cinematic heritage needs to be studied as such, regardless of how of the message, of how disgusting and how fucking racist and damaging it might be. You don't do yourself any favors by ignoring what is out there. And in fact, by watching this movie, you have a better understanding of the power of cinema, because I don't know if I watched this before I watched the second Rambo film, the Vietnam film, where he goes to Vietnam and wins the war, actually, basically, because we weren't allowed to, according to Rambo, we weren't allowed to win the war. And I hadn't put it together how incredibly racist that film was until I watched this film. Sometimes it takes you, maybe that's because it was a period that I was growing up in. I think there are times when you have to be shown something and you have to be far removed from it in order to see it close, in order to see it for what it is. So when I saw that, you know what I mean? So I saw that, and then I realized how much of a manipulation James Cameron's screenplay was for the second Rambo film, and what would ultimately be this animalistic depiction of the Viet Cong, in the same way that blacks in this film are either buffoons or dangerous, animalistic, and, as always, a sexual threat to the white woman.
Mm-hmm.
It was all there. I had seen it all. I recognized it for what it was, but I didn't realize the impact until I saw Rambo. Those are weird dots to connect, but that's what got me to both the understanding and the realization of the understanding of image and the realization of the power of this type of thing, where you start to see, wow, this is, you can't ignore the image. So when you watch TV, right, and especially now, when you watch Trump videos of grainy footage of the border and men and women climbing over the wall, or these hordes of people trying to get in, if you go with a few close-ups and you take a few shots of children and put the right music on it, that's a different story.
Oh, that's a fucking Sally Struthers.
Exactly.
Fucking,
You know
please
what I mean?
help.
Yeah.
Send me money. So
Exactly.
and then
That's a
those
triumph.
of you who know, those of you who are that old,
Yeah.
you know, fucking that.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, it's all about the messaging. This is kind of what we were talking about, like a few episodes back. It's like the editing, the branding. It's like, are you watching the progressive cut, or are we watching the fucking MAGA cut?
Yeah.
Because it's like you can use some of the same footage, different music, like you said, close-ups, and then now look at, I mean, two things when it comes to this, and it's also, it's not only like TVs, it's fucking shit it's social media that we're seeing it on. It's TikTok. It's these little few second long clips, these shorts. First thing, Donald Trump now has brought that into I mean, it was already part of the discussion, but now he's obsessed with, because he has a little dick, he's obsessed with crowd size. And so he's upset that Kamala Harris has bigger crowds than him.
Yeah.
And he said those crowds that you're seeing on her videos, that's AI. That shit's not even real.
Yeah.
That's what he's falsely claiming, right? But the thing is that, like, pretty soon he's probably working on his fucking AI crowds right now too. But he's accusing the other side first because that's what you do, right? But there is going to come that point where it's like, yeah, what is it? Like, hey, my AI assistant, is this AI? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Because I also saw today, this is the second thing, Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins. I saw this little clip of him promoting their new album. And I don't know if it's recent or if the album came out how long ago, but I just saw the clip, and it's him promoting the clip in Spanish, and it's his voice, it's his lips moving, and he's promoting his album in Spanish. And I say, oh, Billy Corgan, like, I didn't know that he spoke Spanish. But then I'm like, or is this fucking AI?
Yeah.
It's fucking AI. And then their album came out last month. I don't know how recent that little ad is though, but so then I kept scrolling, and then I saw him do it again, but in Portuguese, and it's AI. It's and it's, you know, it's openly that this is AI, that he's using this as a tool to really like connect with different groups or whatever in their language, and so you can there potentially we could be doing this podcast with our voices. It'll be our voices, but it could be in a different language where it would translate and do it in that language with the sounds of our voices. And if we were using video, it would be our faces and our mouths moving according to the postures of that language, and that would be it. And it would be like, oh shit, like I speak Ebonics, you know, I speak Jive, you know, and we could be on airplane, or it could be us fucking doing Japanese or doing whatever the fuck whatever, you know.
Well, it's funny because
Valyrian from fucking Game of Thrones.
It's insane because that can be used for humor, or it can be used as a tool to propaganda. Yeah, it's something that cracked me up the other day. I was scrolling on Instagram, and there was some Mexican Chicano guy, probably LA area, and he was fake interviewing Donald Trump, and he was like, "Why should the Chicano people vote for you?" And then they cut to Donald Trump, and he said, "Porque," something like, "Porque Dallas Cowboys vale verga." I think it's just like, and it was like Raider Nation for life, Raider Nation por vida, chinga los Dallas Cowboys, and they come back to the guy. He's like, you make a lot of good points. I don't know what we're gonna do. Now that's ridiculous, right? It's fucking stupid.
I mean, yeah. Well, he likes tacos. And he's talking about fucking tacos. And,
yeah. But what you're talking about is deceptive.
Well, Elon Musk already did that with Harris. And Elon Musk is very much about using his position and his resources to fucking do that. So going back to Virtual Nation, it's like it's a fucking propaganda film.
Yeah.
It shows the KKK as the heroes.
Mm-hmm.
It shows supposedly what would happen if black people succeeded politically. And they start to have like all these fucking riots and all this. It's all these blacks in the street, right? And then now it looks like, and I said this at the time, it's like, oh, this is how they see Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
This is how they see Antifa. This is how they see anything that isn't January 6th. And it's fucking crazy. I mean, and it's now 2 years later. Now we're doing this massive retrospective. So it's like perspective upon perspective upon perspective, and you can see, you were looking backwards, but you can see all this stuff projected forward from over 100 years ago. This shit came out in fucking 2015. I mean, I'm sorry, 1915 or whenever this film came out,
mm-hmm.
and here we are in 2022 when we were doing this episode, and now 2024 looking back on it, and it goes back to that fucking Paul Mooney joke again.
Mm-hmm. Rip Van Nigger.
Which remind us of that one more time.
Huh? Rip Van Nigger. It's about a nigger that goes to sleep for 100 years and he wakes up, nothing has changed. Nothing.
That's the fucking joke.
That's the end.
You know what I mean? And
what's scary is that it's not really a joke.
Right.
There's a reality and a truth to it. Maybe it's extreme, and there, you'll have your Bill Maher's and such will say things are better than they were, which I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah, they are better.
They are better, but that doesn't mean they're good.
Right. It means there's still it's better because we're having to fight for them to be better.
Yeah. It's the fight never ends. It never becomes an easy thing that you can just forget about. You don't ever get to you never get to coast in the glory of a victory. It just doesn't happen. You have to keep fighting. You have to be out there remembering what you didn't have and fighting to maintain it. I mean, I watch these movies and it's a cliche and people say it, and I've been listening to it for my nearly 5 decades, but those who fail to study history are doomed to repeat it. And it's fucking true. It's so true. And this movie is an example of, some people might be listening to us and some people might tell their friends about us and they'll say, well, we like a lot of the shit that these guys say, but then they start going off on these tangents about race and culture, and maybe there's some validity to that. We do this, but the facts are, if you study something, you'll start to see the parallels.
This is the first major film,
mm-hmm.
At least the first major American fucking film, like the American masterpiece, of cinema. and this is the subject matter. What the fuck does that tell you?
It's
You know what I
sad.
mean? Like this is so much of a part of the fabric of this culture, and how Americans view themselves and the people that they other who are also part of this culture, who are also Americans, whether like it or not. And this shit, elements of this have gone into horror genre. I mean, how many times have we talked about that? The blonde woman running away. That's fucking like King Kong, fucking Evil Dead, whatever, right? It's here. It's in Birth of a Nation. Every time Fox News or the Sky News or whatever right-wing channel talks about, immigrants killed this woman, like some random immigrant killed this this white lady, like be afraid, be very afraid. This is Birth of a Nation.
Yeah. You can't ignore it. And it's not a matter of expounding on the troubles in this world and bitching about representation. I'm not doing that. What we're doing is recognizing the tools that tell those stories, that push that agenda. I think that's the most important thing, is to understand that whatever it is that you are watching on that screen is a calculated expression. And it's trying to get you to react in a certain way. That's not our fault. And I'm not even angry about it so much as I'm fascinated by how it occurs. That's the thing for me.
Yeah, this is the reality.
What's that?
It's just the reality.
Yeah. That's
It's
the
the
way I
fucking
see it.
reality.
Yeah.
So from there we moved from that uplifting KKK adventure. We moved into more rock and roll, where we looked at the documentaries 20 Feet from Stardom, Standing in the Shadows of Motown, and Muscle Shoals, episode 367, about the people that you don't really hear. They're the headliners, right? They're the people whose name is on the fucking album, who are making the music, and then there are those who are backing them up, assisting them in the making of that music. It's cool to see that, to see the people that we hear, but we don't know their name, we don't know their face, but we've heard their voices, we've heard their playing, and we've already created, like, you take for granted sometimes that, like, okay, a lot of these Muscle Shoals people, it's like you're thinking that it's just these fucking old black guys who fucking have this great groove, and it's just fucking these unknown white guys that have a great groove, and it's like, well, of course, that has nothing to do with it. But going back to fucking that other thing, it's like we're creating these stories, and we're told these stories about how fucking white men can't jump and all this and that too, and then you're going like, oh shit, Muscle Shoals, these motherfuckers are, they have such a fucking like a tight unit, such a tight band, and look at all the shit that they're in.
Yeah.
Look at the stuff that they've played for. And then you've got Bono going like, bubbling up from the earth, which I know you hate because it sounds very fucking like, it sounds kind of new agey and poetic and romantic and attached to place. But on some level, I think there is something like kind of real about that. There is a thing about fucking place that means something. Like you could walk the streets of LA and you're gonna get some impressions. And I don't know. I mean, you could be completely alone walking the streets of LA and ghosts or the streets of Hollywood, and you will, not literally, but I mean like figuratively, ghosts will manifest. The ghosts of the city will manifest before you. Peter Ackroyd has all these books about London and kind of dealing with that and like the hauntology of that, and kind of like this element of you can stand under an eave in whatever corner of London and you'll be standing where thousands of other people have stood, and you'll be trying to avoid rain that thousands of other people have been trying to avoid in that very spot. But he'll just change up the backdrop and say, well, at this point it was because of this. And then now if you go underground, these are the catacombs, or these are the abandoned tunnels, or these are the, you know what I mean? Like there's so many layers. And so for a place like Muscle Shoals, that's why it would become this type of mecca, musical mecca for musicians to go and say, like, I want to record there. I want to record at fucking Muscle Shoals because that band and that place and that studio, that building, it's one of those. And to see that story is cool. And from there we went to Tarkovsky's Mirror, which was also similar in that it's memory. Tarkovsky, the Russian poet, filmmaker, going into Russian and Soviet history, into childhood, into fucking his past, his mother, rooms where it rains inside, poetic, artistic, surrealistic, psychological, philosophical. If you want something along those lines, go check out Mirror.
With Tarkovsky, I would say, and I've only seen 3 films, and he's a 2 for 3 for me. Mirror and Stalker, incredible films. Stalker being the masterpiece as far as I'm concerned, and Mirror, I remember really enjoying, but I have to go back to it. It's weird when you reach a certain age and you've missed out on something. It's it can be very rewarding to finally discover a thing, and that was Tarkovsky for me. To start seeing Tarkovsky at mid-40s and watching these films, these examinations of life, and the way these poetic examinations that, let's face it, are just not really encouraged or even possible in cinema because of the business nature of what movie making is. Guys like Tarkovsky, Terrence Malick, and such, they have this ability to create beautiful images that tell a story. The poetry of the imagery really gets under your skin and is just beautifully realized. I'm sorry that doesn't happen more often in films. It really bugs the shit out of me that more films like this don't get made.
Well, I mean, now it's like, well, the democratization of everything because of our levels of technology allows for people. I mean, we could go out and do that. I mean, with what we have, we could do our version of something, right? Yeah. The thing is, and we can also just upload it to the internet, right? But we don't have the marketing machinery that that studios and these established channels have. And therefore, while we can make something and it can potentially like catch fire out there online, go viral, the likelihood is that it's going to just drown in the sea of fucking shit that like is out there. No one's going to see it because it's not sexy enough, not angry enough, not political enough, not whatever enough. And it's just one of those things that, and if people do see it, they'll see it, they'll like it, and they'll keep swiping.
Yeah.
And maybe they'll subscribe to your fucking like Instagram thing or whatever. And I've seen fucking like crazy shit that people are doing with AI, creating art, creating these videos. And then I look at the person's profile, and they have like what to me seems like a very small amount of followers. And I mean, that doesn't mean shit, but at the same time, it's kind of like, wow, like, this is really creative. This is really whatever. But then you see something that's very, very much like to the lowest common denominator. And of course, that's fucking like,
yeah, the hit.
That's the hit. So it's a very, it can be very disconcerting. But at the same time, there's, you know, it's what are you doing it for? You know, Rick Rubin talks about, the producer legend Rick Rubin is like, well, art should be for you. He's like, that's art. Art, when you have the audience in mind, that's commerce. That's a different thing. Like there's that balance. And Tarkovsky was one of those artists that he was able to produce what he produced despite being in Soviet Russia. And is one of those beloved and well-respected directors, despite being so fucking like obscure in terms of the material.
Yeah.
And whatever success he had, but at the same time, it's like in the world of cinema and of cinema history, he's a giant, and we still can see his shit. And it's like nothing you're gonna see. It's very unique. It's very Tarkovsky. It's personal. It's one of those things that it's like, yeah, this is Tarkovsky.
Yeah.
It has his mark. It has his stamp. It's a beautiful film.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm looking forward to the remaining 4 or 5 films. Andrei Rublev, Nostalgia, and I don't know what else. But
Nostalgia.
Ivan's Childhood.
Ivan's Childhood. Yeah.
Ivan's Childhood.
Yeah. So I mean, there's still shit out there.
Oh, yeah.
From there, we went back into the rock and roll world. We did Frank Zappa, another one. Music, very unique. Not popular music, although he did versions of what he would consider like his own take on pop. There are a couple documentaries. There's Zappa. There's Eat That Question, which is him in his own words, where he's just this opinionated fucking asshole who never did things anyone else's way. He did them his own way. He was able to make a living at that. Push the envelope musically and artistically. And that's how he lived his fucking life. And again, another fucking inspirational figure, whether you like the music or not.
Well, I think that was the thing that you and I discussed, and I pointed out to you. I really wished that I liked the music as much as I liked Zappa. I found Zappa fascinating. I agreed with him in a lot of respects on the art and the artistic merit and the artistic drive behind creating music. I think he was a true pioneer, not so much in the music, but in fighting the system and getting away from, or at least, I mean, it was a true David versus Goliath type of story where Zappa was going up against the gods, and he was chopping them down little by little, and I found that fascinating. I found the idea that this guy would have the drive necessary to fight the corporate music entity, and I loved that about him. I loved his character a hell of a lot more than I liked his music. So the documentaries are well worth looking at. I just wouldn't listen to the albums.
Listen to the albums and then fucking be like, okay, this is what you get a taste for it, and then if you're not into it, you just move on. But at least you understand, like, oh shit, like, okay, this is what was coming out of that mind, and it's not only like rock; it's like rock music, but with jazz and fucking classical and avant-garde comedy, mashed up with fucking crazy electric guitar solos. It was just this mix of stuff. From there, we went into the Beach Boys. More troubled genius. Brian Wilson, Long Promised Road. Brian Wilson, I just wasn't made for these times. The Beach Boys film, the biopic Love and Mercy. A lot there.
And it was important that we titled the episode was titled Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys: The History of Rock and Roll. So it was important to recognize the separation between the Beach Boys, of which Brian Wilson was a part of, but also Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. So it was like Brian Wilson was his own entity. It was important to know that. I'm not a fan of the Beach Boys, the Beach Boys, but I recognize the importance of them in the history of rock and roll, and the films themselves, at least. Brian Wilson, I Just Wasn't Made for These Times, Long Promised Road, and Love and Mercy were all very, I think they were really well made and intriguing in their examination of this artist and this man. And, I am kind of fascinated by the level of troubled psychological problems that went into the making of this music, whether it was psychological problems that aided the music or hindered the music and was overcome. That I'm not sure of. That's a fascinating discussion, because
the jury's still out on all that, but it's kind of a metaphor for when we're talking about. Look at how we talk about Tarantino, and you've made this point about how the death of his editor kind of sent him in another direction, which made his films longer and more self-indulgent, right? So Brian Wilson's use of the studio as an instrument kind of has this message to the world of or not a message too, but it reinforces this idea that, well, while films are created, and Peter Greenaway would say this is an issue, is that we have a textually based cinema, where a film it's first created on the page, and it's realized through the camera. Films are made in the editing bay. The story is really being told in the edit. And so Brian Wilson himself, he was not only a musician and a singer and someone who had this gift for these crazy harmonies. He also had a gift for production and for sound engineering in terms of like how now do you translate these songs and these sounds into something that's larger. And then now you have a film describing that story and making its own edits about his edits. You know what I mean? So it becomes this meta thing. So very interesting.
Yeah, incredible.
We went into the 20s.
This is fun.
The 20s were the films that defined their decades. We would take 10 films and kind of we developed this kind of game system that we did where the way we ended up doing it, and we kind of like stuttered through it a little bit, is that we would each have 10 films that we felt that were the defining films of their decade.
And I think we also had like 5 honorable mention films as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And we would go back and forth, and if you mentioned one as your number 8, but I mentioned it as my number 5, then we would hold off on discussing it and move it up, and we would just keep going through until ultimately we got to each our number 1 pick, described why.
Yeah. And
we did that for once a month. We did that for every fucking decade. And so it's really interesting to go and to go through that and to see, well, why is it Metropolis or is it fucking is it the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari or is it the Gold Rush? Is it the General? And to really see those and see why and see what arguments we made and the perspectives of why we would think that and to have that kind of like the long view. So that was cool.
Did we agree on this one? Did we both pick Metropolis? Or did I pick the General and you picked Metropolis? Or?
I think you picked the General because you're a contrarian.
Yeah, that probably was true.
And
I would say that probably the looking back on it, Metropolis would be the more logical and realistic and honest pick. I think the General. I made some kind of fucking argument that made sense, and I still think I'll stand by it. As far as being able to the power of comedy and the creation of the underdog character that carried through. Yeah, I think that was it.
You had such a good time with it.
I had a fucking great time with it. I had a great time with this episode.
You were like, you enjoyed the General so much that you were like, I don't give a fuck. I had such a good time last night, whatever you said, and you were like, so I'm picking the General. Yeah. Fuck it. It was like just one of those things where it's like, I don't give a fuck. Like I enjoyed it that much.
Yeah.
I don't care if it makes sense.
Yeah. That was
in and of itself. I mean, that's a powerful argument too. You know what I mean? Like your experience of it.
Well, that was definitely an argument from heart rather than mind. You know, that was a heartfelt argument rather than a mindful one. Yeah. And
that you're fucking just the fact that it's 2022 and you're talking about a film that's 100 years old, and you're like, I don't give a fuck. It's this one.
Yeah.
Because that's how good of a time I had with this 100-year-old fucking silent film. Like that's crazy. Because you ask some fucking kid off the street now, and they're gonna say that fucking some movie from the 90s is old as fuck.
It's scary, but yeah,
you know what I mean. Not a 100-year-old film. You know what I mean? Like that's crazy.
But that's the thing about people who really do love movies. I mean, because these movies are way before, 50s were way before us. If we're going to be realistic, our idea of what old movies would have been when we were growing up would have been Taxi Driver, Apocalypse Now, The Godfather. Those were old movies. By the time we were really paying attention to movies in the 80s, those would have been old movies.
Sure. But our sense of time and our sense of I think was different when we could still turn on the TV and you could see fucking I Love Lucy.
Yeah.
And so you still had access, and culturally, I think those things were still more relevant. I mean, fucking Charlie Chaplin was still like, I knew who Charlie Chaplin was as a kid, even though I hadn't fucking seen the Gold Rush. You know what I mean? Like, but I knew who Charlie Chaplin was because it's in the culture. I knew about, you know, the Wizard of Oz. I did see as a kid, but like, you know what that is. I had seen fucking Steamboat Willie. I knew like the concept that this is an older version of Mickey Mouse. So it's like, it's different. It was different for us then than what it is now, because we had, I think, more of a kind of a complete, up to that point, like big picture view of some of this cultural shit. Now it's so fucking so cut up, so fragmented that it's kind of like, oh, this old movie from fucking 5 years ago, and you're going like, wait, what? Like, no, old means like from your parents' time or your grandparents' time, and then they're like, oh no, that's ancient.
That's the problem with today. I mean, but then you know, you talk to certain people, and that's just us propping up our own egos. Although there's a truth to it. We come from a time that had a greater understanding of the history that came before us and its influence on what we're doing and listening to and watching today. That just doesn't exist anymore. It just fucking doesn't. I talk to kids today, and you're absolutely right. The 90s are old to them. It's crazy.
So completely old. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's and I wonder. I mean, I don't know, because I wonder what it was like for our parents, for the baby boom generation. Like, were they were they really like aware of shit that was fucking happening in the fucking Roaring '20s, the way that we were of the shit that was happening in their day? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just think that at least for our generation, we had all these levels of media that were there to remind us, and there were specials on TV that were there to remind us that this is the anniversary of this, and Life magazine this, Time magazine that. You know, we right. The next episode we did was Lenny Bruce, and we can come back and talk that. I'm gonna skip. We did Laurel Canyon. Laurel Canyon, the music scene. You had, you know, the Joni Mitchells, the David Crosby's, Jim Morrison, also Brian Wilson, Frank Zappa, Linda Ronstadt, all of that stuff. Jackson Browne, the Byrds, Crosby, Stills and Nash, et cetera, right? Mamas and the Papas. But then there's also the Charles Manson elements. And, you know, I keep going back to that because I'm very much interested in it, but it's kind of like the TV would remind me that the Manson murder is actually the anniversary just passed a few days ago. And that's 55 years ago.
That's pretty crazy.
55 years ago that happened. And I remember fucking, as a matter of fact, as I say this is today. This is the anniversary of Woodstock. Today. 55 years ago. This is the 15th. of 2024, and so there was the 3 days of music, 3 days of peace and music, Woodstock, New York, 1969, 55 years ago. And I remember Woodstock 94 or whatever, and it was 25 years ago. And we were constantly being reminded of like, oh, this is when this happened, and then and Dateline and Frontline and all these shows and 2020, and it was kind of like, so you could be a young person and halfway, even if you weren't paying attention, and those of us who listen to this show, you, me, we were the ones who paid attention. We were the ones that were interested in other shit. We were the ones that kind of had our eyes open and kind of like, what's that? Oh, what's over there? So that when whoever was on TV would remind us and say like, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, blah, blah, blah. Remember this, Muhammad Ali this, the Beatles that, Ronald Reagan this. They would have specials commemorating things, and it was kind of like, oh, okay, like let me look into this. What is this? Now it's different. Now it's, I mean, maybe you'll get it, but you'll get it at a clip. If you don't know who's on the clip, you're gonna fucking scroll through. Bye, right? I don't know how, going back to the Lenny Bruce thing, it's like I had seen some clip of something on TV where they mentioned Lenny Bruce, and it was probably maybe on a PBS thing. So that when I saw that there was at the library, a movie about Lenny Bruce with Dustin Hoffman, and I go, oh, okay. And then the soundtrack has this amazing music, and it's Miles Davis. Oh shit! There's that album is also, let me look what songs are these? Blah blah. I go through the encyclopedia, go whatever I did, right? I find the library also has now that it has that CD. Okay, now I'm fucking listening to the CD, putting in the effort, right? Seeking it out, so that when you get that payoff, there's a greater payoff than just I'm gonna just scroll through it and
Yeah, well, it's never a thing. It's
Different.
never a single thing that can. It's never a one and done. It really is about where one thing leads you to something else, whether it's the music or it's paintings that inspired the look, or the writing that this was a novelist turned a screenwriter. Let me take a look at what this motherfucker wrote. And you go into different worlds, and it was the original rabbit hole, but it was more rewarding because it was an actual adventure. You got up, you went out there, you looked for it, you spoke to people.
Choose your own adventure.
Yeah, it was. It absolutely was, and it brought us closer together as a people and as a culture, because it really was about, oh, what have you seen that I haven't? And, peep me to that. There was more a sense of camaraderie, and this idea that whatever this person likes, I'm either going to embrace it, I'm going to dismiss it, or we are going to become tighter because of it.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how many friends you make simply because you share a certain similar tastes. It's amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, fucking Mick Jagger and Keith Richards are on a fucking train, and they've seen each other around, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I forget which one. Maybe it's Mick Jagger. He has some records in his hand, and they're all like blues records, fucking like some maybe a little bit more obscure than the others.
Mm-hmm.
And Keith Richards kind of like, and you can see it in your mind's eye, Keith Richards kind of cocking his head to the side and saying like, "What you got over there?" Like, but not as old, right?
Yeah.
And with those weird movements and not as much heroin at that, as there would be to come, and not as many scarves and whatever and bandanas and whatnot, and saying, "Well, what do you got? What do you got over there?" And then now they're, you like that? Oh, I like that. Let me borrow. Can I borrow that? And never give it back, and then that's when you're a friend,
Yeah.
And out of that, the fucking Rolling Stones. The name comes from that.
Yeah.
From Muddy Waters. The magazine comes from that. From Muddy. You know what I mean? Like, so exactly. Like, and the T-shirts that you wore defined kind of like they were like. It wasn't necessarily that you were fucking like some race car that has all these brands on you. It was that this is the subculture that I embrace. And I will allow this to like speak as part of who I am. And so then it was like, oh shit, now you can talk about, have you seen that girl who transferred from another school? She's the Ramones girl. Oh yeah, she's hot. Well, she's fucking like, she's kind of weird, but she's cool. And then that opens up now other shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same thing with film. Still to this day, you're gonna meet people. You're gonna have those people at work that are into movies. That you're gonna talk about. Did you see the trailer for this? Did you see the fucking last episode of House of the Dragons or whatever the fuck it's called? What did you think of it? Blah blah blah. And then that's how you're making friends. You know what I mean? Like, have you heard this fucking podcast called WatchThis with RickRamos? No, of course I've never heard of it. Why would I have heard of that? Well, it sucks. And now we have now we have 6 listeners instead of 5. And that's how it works. You after the Lenny Bruce episode, you went back into film noir. You did a solo. You're
Keep going back
to that fucking realm.
Absolutely.
To take us in, to be the tour guide of the noir.
It was fun. It was just bumbling my way through my perception of it and what I know, the films that I've seen, the idea of losers, bad women, badly conceived scams. I love that shit. I love those movies, and I can talk about them. I can do 100 more episodes on that. Just talking about how things don't work out, and I love those stories. Yeah, it's shit. When did we do our James Ellroy episode? 4 or 5 months ago, right?
Yeah, that would have been 10 maybe. Yeah. 10 months ago.
We're still
the end of last year.
The point of it is that we're still talking about it. We're still talking about the power of the darkness of light and shadow, smoke and unrequited love and disappointment, bitterness, and it makes for great films. That was a fun time for me.
Went into the 30s, the Capras, the John Fords, the Howard Hawks, Fritz Langs.
Yeah. A period that
from there
I think people say 39. I think people say 39 was the greatest film year, and I think we talked about. Did we say Gone with the Wind? Because remember, these were not films that we necessarily thought were the best films.
Yeah.
This was the film that defined, and in the same way that Birth of a Nation defined that period of time, I think 1930s would have either been The Wizard of Oz or Gone with the Wind. The two most powerful, the two films that were embraced by the public and spoke the most to the American idea of who we are as a people. And it's kind of sad that so few foreign films made it onto the list, because that's not because of our distaste for foreign language film. I think we've exhibited many times over our love for Fellini, Kurosawa, Bergman, and Antonioni. These guys. It's a testament to the power of American film and how it's basically the beast that has eaten up let's be honest. American film, American cinema is the Walmart of the cinematic universe. Just goes in there and destroys everything else. And it's not good from an artistic standpoint, but it is what it is.
Big and cheap.
Yeah. Big and cheap. I love doing that. I love that. This was
everywhere.
Yeah, the films that define their decades was one of the best times that I've ever had doing these shows. It's one of my favorite things that we did.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely eye-opening to look back. And at this point, I don't remember which one was. I think it's better if people are going to listen to it and fucking figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, enjoy the countdown to which one each of us think is the one. But I know we did, Triumph of the Will. We did all those. But definitely, I know we talked about we taled about Gone with the Wind. That would have been something that we would have.
Gone with the Wind. There are certain films that are just too important to the cultural vocabulary of cinema to ignore. And it's, I don't like the film. I really don't like it that much, but I cannot deny its power. It's the quality of the filmmaking. I can't dismiss any of that. It's a great film on that level, but it's a film that I watch where I'm like, oh my God, are you fucking kidding me? There's a lot of moments where I just feel like, oh fuck. And
and some decades are more fun than others. So there's also that. But within that Hollywood theme, we went Mulholland Drive into Sunset Boulevard into fucking Who Framed Roger Rabbit, back to back to back, episodes 376.
Yeah, that was a whole LA thing, which I know you were deep diving into. You were feeling great about that, and I loved it too. But it's the history of an old. It's weird because Sunset Boulevard and Robert and Zemeckis' Who Framed Roger Rabbit are both 40s era stories, but there are elements of David Lynch's film that feel out of time. And when you go out of time cinematically, it's usually a 40s feel to it. I don't know. There's something about the noir aspect of the 1940s that is almost timeless. It's very specific to that. It's weird how it exists as very specific to wartime America and a period right out of the Depression, while at the same time being very current. I guess because the struggles are still evident and real and with us. So when you watch Lynch's Mulholland Drive, and let's be honest, Lynch is a filmmaker who is very much into dreams and into both the nightmarish quality of reality and the unpredictability of dreams and the subconscious as they manifest themselves. So when you watch Mulholland Drive or Blue Velvet or Inland Empire, there's no moment when you're watching any of those three films and you're asking yourself, is what I'm watching really happening within the context of the world that's being created, or am I diving into somebody's psyche? And I think that's the thing that really separates David Lynch from any other filmmaker, is that you're never really sure what you're watching, but it's captivating. You can't turn away from it. And I think Mulholland Drive is a masterpiece in that regard.
For sure. for sure. Then going into Sunset Boulevard and pairing, doing those back to back, and the old Hollywood aspect that Mulholland Drive evokes, because David Lynch also he brings in these elements of time, and the neo-noir, and now Sunset Boulevard, and to see that world and to think about, and every time if I pass by that area and I'm just like, oh, Paramount, or I'm like by where you used to live, which is also where James Ellroy, speaking of that, where he grew up, and it's just kind of like, again, the ghosts and everything evokes something else, and like, oh, this freeway is has a straight shot to my soul because of this, or you talk to somebody and it's like, oh, when I used to date that person, that's when I would take that freeway way the fuck over the hill to the other side, or whatever you're saying. And Sunset Boulevard is when I used to be famous. Those were the days. And now I'm just fucking like, you know what I mean? But if only people knew that I still could do this. If I could only get, you know what I mean? It's Raging Bull, but in an old woman's mind. You know what I mean?
Well, I think when we were discussing it, I think part of the thing that really, there's a couple of guys at the Comedy Store that this movie resonates with. The guys who love movies. It's like they've seen it, and I don't mean to disparage the woman, but there is an element of Mitzi Shore in the Norman Desmond character. And that longing for days gone by, and holding on to the power of power in their mind. Nora Desmond is a tragic figure, and when you watch her, there is a sense of sadness there, but there's also there's a comical sense of, oh my God, look at her, and look at how ridiculous. But Wilder's real achievement in that film is humanizing a city that is basically surface level. The industry aspect of the city is almost entirely artificial. And so the way he captures it from the inside and really just smacking the shit out of it the way he does. Billy Wilder is ruthless in that film. That is a fucking brutal, nasty little film. And I think if he hadn't made the money that he was making, and the movie hadn't been the success that it was, they would have blackballed him for that film. Because it is a fucking ugly, ugly take on Hollywood. Hollywood doesn't want people to know that about it. And Billy Wilder spares there is no subtlety there. You have a pretty good fucking idea of what he thinks of Hollywood.
I mean, that and fucking Whatever Happened to Baby Jane are two of the most fucking frightening and haunting and kind of like there's this underlying horror about fame and Hollywood, and it's fucked up and aging.
There's this understanding. Yeah, it's fucked up. There's this understanding of what. I mean, I guess you could make the comparison in a lot of other industries. You can certainly say it about sports, and specifically boxing, the music industry, the chew you up, eat you, and spit the bones out. I mean, it really doesn't care. Yeah, politics, all of it. And
if you don't know, I mean, look at what you can. And politics is one where, I mean, a lot of these, and on a certain level, it is also an entertainment industry. Like, if done well, and you can get old in politics, but you can maintain your dignity if that's the game you're playing, until you can. And then you got to step down. You know what I mean? And it's like, whatever happened to Baby Biden. You know what I mean? Like, it becomes some of that. You know what I mean? Like, or fucking Trump. You know what I mean? Like Sunset Boulevard. You know what I mean? Like Donald Trump is gonna have fucking JD Vance floated in that pool. You know, you know what I mean? Like it's fucking crazy. And instead of coming down that fucking golden escalator, he's gonna come down at the end of the film, like ready for his fucking close up, before the cops take him away.
It's amazing how prescient that film is. It's amazing how, but that's the thing. When you make something that deals with real life, real people, time doesn't change the narrative. It's just resupposed. It's repurposed for a new generation. Everything that what you're saying is, there's a lot of people that'll be listening like, oh my God, you guys just fucking draw the craziest, weirdest, most ridiculous conclusions. But
I try.
We don't. We really don't. And there are times when I'm listening to you going, okay, here we go. Let me buckle in. And I love it. I love it because I know I'm like, yeah, that's, two pessimistic, cynical fucks probably shouldn't be talking about the world with any sense of
pseudo authority, of full
I guess, baby.
Expertise.
We're gonna see the dark side. We're gonna sit here. We're not gonna temper our attitudes with what people imagine we're supposed to say, or we're negative. But I think, as Munchausen showed, as Wizard of Oz shows, there is an appreciation for the beauty. There is an appreciation for and an embracing of that which is hopeful. I don't like the dismissive nature of what we do, and I'm not talking about us being dismissive. I'm talking about everybody else who would say, you guys are too fucking, long-winded and pretentious. Okay, maybe, but listen to the attitude regarding what is being seen. I will defend that shit to my dying days. What we're talking about here in each and every episode are true feelings and emotions, and these are the driving forces behind the criticism of what we are watching. For good and bad, these movies mean something to us. Art means something to us. And part of that is the reflection that it has on the culture. So when you start talking about Sunset Boulevard, yeah.
We always go fucking back to that.
Always.
Because we can't escape it. We cannot escape those ghosts. This is fucking what we do, and we revisit them, and we'll take you into the haunted house of Hollywood, old Hollywood cinema, and its effects on culture every fucking week that we can.
But we also have
money.
Yeah.
I'm Sally Struthers now, talking about her. Go ahead. What were you saying?
No, but what I was saying is that we have a unique perception because of the world's, you through theater for all those years, and me through acting and stand-up comedy. I mean, I was in those clubs, and I've been on those lots, going through the cattle calls, busted my ass trying to get parts that it just wasn't going to happen. Whatever. I mean, we have an upfront and personal experience in the world that is being depicted in these films, specifically the Hollywood films, the Sunset Boulevard, the Mulholland Drive, films about people who go to the glitter, not realizing the doom that is awaiting them. I love that. I love that.
I mean, it is the moth to the flame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but there's so many different ways to look at that world. I mean, look at those three films. We're talking, okay, Mulholland Drive, late 90s, early 2000s, but an actor. Sunset Boulevard, a former famous actor in the 1950s, a 1950 film with populated by 20s and 30s stars. Go into Zemeckis' Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which it would be real easy to say, well, what's the connection? That movie is set in Hollywood. Roger Rabbit is a character from the movies. But what Zemeckis does, and does so brilliantly from source material of a novel, is make these characters no longer ink and pen. Now they're real. They exist in a world that that is just as troubling. And I think that's the brilliance of the film. It's not just the technological. Roger Rabbit is not just the technological feat of what is created, of blending live action with animation and doing it brilliantly with let's face it, incredible performances from both Joanna Cassidy, Christopher Lloyd, and most importantly Bob Hoskins, who kind of went crazy for a year after making this film. But this is about the fragility of each of us. And when you see it on screen like that, there was a time when I talked to you about the characters in both. Do you remember this conversation? We were talking about the characters in Looney Tunes, the cool suaveness of Bugs Bunny, the exasperated jealousy of Daffy Duck, and then into the Muppets, where what makes those work, what makes those characters work for me, what makes me believe that those puppets are real, is how much they resemble actual human beings. And it's a testament to the voice work of Mel Blanc, but also the puppeteering skills of guys like Jim Henson, Frank Oz, Jerry Jewell, all of these people that brought these characters to life. What makes them last and what makes us keep going back to them is the truth and the humanity of the performances. Otherwise, it's just drawings on the screen.
Yeah, it's just words on a Hallmark card.
Yeah,
like I said earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's, Tunes gets them every time. You watch Who Framed Roger Rabbit, all three of them. Mulholland, Sunset Boulevard, Roger Rabbit, all three noirs, all three with a different handling of the noir. And it's a testament
that
to
old Hollywood backdrop.
Yeah, beautiful, just beautifully done. It was a great time to watch all three of those movies. I had never seen Mulholland. I had seen Sunset Boulevard numerous times. I had seen Roger Rabbit numerous times. But when you watch them for a show like this, where we're going to break them down, where we're going to talk about them, where we're going to get into the intricacies of what the storytelling is, you look at things differently. And some people might say, well, that kind of takes away the fun of the movie. Well, you're not us.
It takes away, in the same way that, like, when you turn a page, it takes away that page. Mm-hmm. Well, you're on to the next page, you know what I mean? Like, and the page is still there. It's a journey that we're on. It's a journey that we're taking you to. We'll end there tonight.
Do you want to do? Let's finish. Because I don't think we have time for another episode. Let's just keep going.
Do you want to just keep rolling?
Yeah, I would love to talk about More Than Hard Boiled, defining the 1940s, because this was an episode where we really started to. I think once we got to the 40s, I think we really started grabbing a hold of something and really capturing what these decade episodes were about. I think the first three were good episodes, and we had a lot of fun doing them, and they were getting the point across. But also, I think when we got to the 40s, films had changed up at that point, where they were no longer just entertainment, and we were starting to really see I think it was because that period of the Great Depression and then going into World War II, so that the 1940s were just a really powerful time. And I'm not going to say what the film was that I picked that defined that decade, because I want it to be, I want people to go back to it. But it was a film that I went back to and I thought, oh my God, this is something completely beyond who I am. Because this is schmaltzy in a weird way. This is very obvious in another way. But I remember thinking to myself, this is a testament, and this really speaks to the psychology and the attitude of the 1940s America. And I was overwhelmed by it.
Which sets the tone for the next decade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that's how it works, and it's because you could make an argument without mentioning that film. You could make an argument that film is in some levels a 50s film.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now it's still for certain reasons you say, well, not really, because blah 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 blah. But which once, if you do the detective work, you'll know what the blahs mean. But that was another element of that exercise, which was interesting, is that you could sense kind of how films were these like liminal things that existed sometimes between, because obviously decades are not, and we talked about this, they're not like, here is this line, and now things are this way on this side of the line, and once you cross that line, that temporal line of like January 1st, now things are this way. It's not like that, obviously. But then in hindsight, we get a sense of like, okay, this is what the 80s were like, and now we have this kind of loose definition of or impression of what we think the 80s are, or the 50s, or any decade. But you can have a film from 1978 that feels like an 80s film. You can have a film from 1990 that still feels like a fucking 80s film.
Yeah.
And then in the 90s, and I do this all the fucking time, you can have a film from 93 that I'm like, oh, that came out in 94, but it didn't. Mm-hmm. But it still feels like 94 to me somehow, because it's like all films in the 90s are from 1994 almost.
Because that was the formative year. That was the year, you know? I mean, it's we all look back to, we all look back to
30 years ago.
30 years. But it all comes down to the formative years of, I mean, it's all a selfish thing, because it reflects who we are and were at a certain period of our lives. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I mean, what really matters to me is I love discovering something that I didn't know existed. But at the same time, I'm going to go back to Midnight Run. I'm going to go back to Hard Times. I'm going to go back to Unforgiven, Once Upon a Time in the West. The formative films, the films that really affected and created the persona that I would eventually become. And each person has that for themselves. Some people it's music. Some people it's sports. For me, it was this. It was seeing the men that I wanted to become. And they were always tough, hard, and troubled to some degree. You gravitate towards certain things that are appealing to you. So 94 makes sense to you. If you start to self-analyze that thing, you start to ask yourself, what the fuck was going on in 94?
Well, yeah.
And you can either scare the shit out of yourself, or you can get a better understanding and be like, oh, fuck yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, it's that thing.
Sure.
And I
Yeah,
dig that.
everything kind of fucking starts to line up. And you get that in other periods of your life as well, where it's kind of like, oh shit, you know, maybe it's on one end it's like 94, and then over here maybe it's 2007 or whatever it is, 2004. It's these periods of your life. You have these markers, and society has its markers. You have your markers. It's what albums came out, what books came out, what book did you read, even if it didn't come out that year. What podcast, you know, what's happening? Who did you elect? Who did you fucking sleep with? Was it before or after COVID? You know what I mean? Like, or, you know, the year of the pandemic, whatever it is. Is it the year that your first kid was born? Blah, blah. So this whole process is very interesting to look back from 2014 to 2024, and to still be in that process, and to now, like, to look back at stuff and be like, I don't remember exactly, you know, what movie did I pick as my top movie for the 40s. And we're inching our way closer to where we're at now. And, you know, some of these episodes, you know, I knew that we had done them, but it's kind of like, oh shit, like, I hadn't thought about that in a while.
Well, like I was just saying, with like Tarkovsky, Mirror, I was like, I don't remember Mirror that well, but I remember enjoying it, which gets me excited on another level. It's like, oh, I got something that I can revisit.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, and then that's when you get into the territory of like, have I seen it? I did see it. No, I didn't see it. And you swear that it's like, no, I fucking like, but then it's like, oh no, it wasn't that one, it's this one. And to see those differences and the similarities. And that's what we do. That's what we do, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
As long as we're having fun, here.
I mean, and this is fucking fun for us.
Oh, yeah.
If it's not fun for you, you know, fuck you. It's fun for us. And long-winded, pretentious, short-sighted, mean, tough. What did you call it? Tough, hard, and troubled. And troubled and tough, or whatever you say. It's sometimes it's hard-boiled, sometimes it's fucking poached, but we're here. You know what I mean? Like, we're here doing our thing. We're here to be your Sally Struthers and ask you to adopt Rick, and send us money via buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. You can pick the amount, buy us a coffee. You can become, we put out a membership thing. You can do a membership thing, $5 a month. Fuck Netflix, just go with us. And that gives you a chance to tell us what the fuck to talk about, and we'll do that.
We've been very fortunate up to this point with it. You know, we've got some good movies out of it, and we've had some good discussion. I don't think we haven't fought through anything that somebody has recommended to us. No.
People are going to take us in some weird and interesting directions, which we're looking forward to. This episode goes to Stephen Palmer. Thank you for your contribution. Keep a good fight. Keep listening. Find that fucking person who you think might like this, and fucking send them our way so they can also get offended. And we're going to continue to fucking do this for ourselves and for you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.